what we have in Western society over the last couple of centuries is this search for something to replace the missing king. And so there's this search for algorithms that can solve the problem of decision making. Well, if anyone tried to run a private corporation by algorithm, they'd be laughed out of the room. It's unquestioned in the private domain that what you need is an executive with personal authority. For me, that's just the obvious glaring solution that's just sitting there.
Next question.
So one of Mencius's core critiques seems to be that the larger the stakes, the greater the depth and disinterest required in the market for that market to be able to function properly. And with a sovereign government, you're dealing with infinite stakes. So you cannot have a market of infinite depth, because what if we're voting about, let's say, making Warren Buffett or Bill Gates the dictator of the world, right? So those are the kinds of issues. But I hear one counter argument from Professor Hansen and Professor Friedman, which was basically said that as the manipulators enter the market, those manipulators attract the saner players, and so the market liquidity builds up very quickly. The problem here is that these markets have binary decision outcomes at a certain time. You have to pick a time when the decision is made. And when that decision is made, the market has to have sufficient liquidity. So, Professor Hansen, have you done any work to figure out what the proportion of the market liquidity has to be to the stakes involved before you can use that market to make a decision?
There is no such threshold. It's like asking, I mean, people ask similar questions a lot. It's like asking, how many people do you need in a committee meeting? And no, I'm not going to tell you what the topic is about. Just how many should I have, and how long should a committee meeting last? And how big should the room be? And how long should each person talk? I mean, these are things that depend on the context. And the whole point of this as a flexible institution is to make those decisions. The market speculators will decide how much they think they should invest in this topic based on how much is available at stake. The main thing I did recommend was that you subsidize these markets. That is, if you don't subsidize these markets, the amount of attention on any one price will be based on whoever's in the mood, right? It's not based on how important the decision is necessarily or how valuable that information would be. It would just be based on who wants to speculate on that. You would want to basically to subsidize more. Well, there's a formula. There's formulas I can give you. The point is, you'd want to have the scale of the subsidy approximately equal to the value of information in the decisions. So there are standard ways to calculate value of information for decisions, and you'd want those subsidies to be at that level of the value of information that we would all gain. Right. Then we want $1 billion of subsidies.
Okay. This is an improvement because what Professor Hansen is saying basically is if Y is not bigger than X, let's add money to Y. Again, it's very laudable, but it sort of counteracts this kind of beautiful automaticity that we have in this idea of let's hand everything over to a formula, and so suddenly we have to actually calculate Y, which means, as you said, we need to know X, and suddenly this pretty thing isn't looking quite as pretty.
But again, the status quo is what we're up against. Remember how bad the status quo is.
Well, yeah, I'm up against the status quo either. I just have a different direction.